We are so intensely aware of our own feelings that we struggle to realize that other people do not have access to our private internal world. We assume our nervousness or excitement is transparent, when in reality, it is mostly hidden from view. The illusion of transparency is a psychological bias where people tend to overestimate how much their internal mental state is known to others. We often feel like our emotions, thoughts, and even lies are leaking out for everyone to see. In a well-known experiment at Williams College, researchers asked participants to drink several different liquids. Some were pleasant like orange juice, but one was a very bitter drink. The participants were told to keep a neutral face and hide their reaction so that observers could not tell which drink was the bitter one. Afterward, the participants were convinced that their disgust was obvious to everyone in the room. However, the observers were unable to guess which drink was which at a rate better than random chance. This effect is particularly common when people have to speak in public. A speaker might feel like their heart is pounding so loudly that the audience can hear it, or that their shaking hands are visible from the back of the room. This internal intensity creates a false belief that their anxiety is clear to everyone. In most cases, the audience sees a much calmer and more composed version of the person than what the speaker is experiencing on the inside. Knowing this can help reduce stage fright by reminding you that your feelings are not actually on display. The illusion of transparency also affects our personal relationships and communication. We sometimes get frustrated with friends or partners because we feel like our needs or moods should be obvious to them. We might think I'm clearly upset, but since they cannot read our minds, they may have no idea anything is wrong. By recognizing that our internal states are not as transparent as they feel, we can learn to communicate more directly instead of waiting for others to notice what we are thinking. In the context of detecting deception, the illusion of transparency plays a fascinating role in how both liars and truth-tellers behave. People who are telling a lie often feel a heavy burden of guilt or anxiety, and they frequently believe these emotions are written all over their faces. This can lead to a state of overcorrection, where the liar tries so hard to appear calm that they end up acting unnaturally stiff or overly formal. Their belief that their lie is transparent causes them to behave in ways that actually make them look more suspicious to a trained observer. Interestingly, this effect also impacts people who are telling the truth but are under pressure. If a person is being questioned by the police or an employer, they might feel nervous simply because of the situation. Because of the illusion of transparency, they assume their nervousness will be interpreted as a sign of guilt. This fear can lead to defensive behavior or stuttering, which ironically makes them appear dishonest to others. This is a major reason why human lie detection is often inaccurate, as we frequently mistake the transparency of simple stress for the transparency of a lie. This bias also shows up in negotiations and high-stakes business deals. A person might feel that their desperation to close a deal or their lack of confidence in a proposal is obvious to everyone across the table. This internal feeling can cause them to give up more than they intended or to settle for a worse outcome. In reality, the other party is usually just as focused on their own goals and is likely not picking up on the subtle internal shifts that the individual feels are so glaringly clear. To combat the negative effects of the illusion of transparency, it helps to practice a technique called externalizing your focus. Instead of monitoring your own heart rate or worrying about your facial expressions, try to direct all of your attention toward the other person. By focusing on their words and their reactions, you naturally move away from the self-centered perspective that fuels the illusion. This shift not only makes you feel more comfortable, but also helps you communicate more effectively, as you are no longer distracted by the false belief that your mind is an open book. In romantic social settings like a first date, the illusion of transparency can create significant misunderstandings. You might feel that your attraction to the other person is incredibly obvious, leading you to wonder why they are not reciprocating more clearly. Alternatively, if you're feeling very awkward or self-conscious, you might assume your date can see every bit of your internal struggle. This can lead to a cycle of anxiety where you feel exposed and vulnerable, even though your date likely sees you as much more composed and confident than you feel. This gap between internal feeling and external appearance often leads to missed opportunities. A person might feel they are sending clear signals of interest, but because of the illusion of transparency, those signals are actually much more subtle than they realize. This is sometimes called the signal amplification bias. To the person sending the signal, it feels loud and clear, but to the person receiving it, the signal is faint or even invisible. This is why being more direct with your words can be much more effective than relying on what you think are obvious nonverbal cues. The illusion of transparency also impacts how we judge the quality of our own creative work. When you write a story, record a video, or create a piece of art, you have a perfect mental map of the meaning and emotion you intended to convey. You might feel that certain themes or messages are transparent and easy for anyone to see. However, because the audience does not have access to your internal intentions, they might miss those details entirely. This often leads to frustration for the creator, who feels the work should speak for itself more clearly. To bridge this gap in your creative projects or your personal life, it helps to seek out honest feedback. Since you cannot objectively see how transparent your thoughts are, asking others what they perceive can be eye-opening. You will often find that the things you thought were obvious were actually hidden, while things you barely noticed about yourself were what stood out to others. Accepting that your internal world is private by default allows you to take more intentional steps to share exactly what you want the world to see. In group dynamics and teamwork, the illusion of transparency can lead to a phenomenon known as the coordination gap. When you're a part of a team, you might feel that your commitment to a project or your frustration with a certain direction is clear to everyone in the room. If you are working hard but feel underappreciated, you may assume your effort is transparent and become resentful when no one acknowledges it. In reality, your teammates are often preoccupied with their own tasks and the specific internal pressure they feel, meaning they likely have no idea about your personal feelings unless you voice them. This effect also contributes to a lack of clarity during brainstorming or planning sessions. A team leader might present an idea and feel that the logic behind it is perfectly transparent. Because the connections are so clear in their own mind, they may fail to explain the necessary steps or the potential risks to the rest of the group. The team members might leave the meeting feeling confused, while the leader remains convinced that everyone is on the same page. This mismatch occurs because the leader overestimates how much of their internal reasoning has actually been communicated. The illusion of transparency also heavily influences our feelings of guilt and regret after a social mistake. If you accidentally say something insensitive or make a small blunder in a group setting, you might feel an intense surge of embarrassment. Because that feeling is so powerful, you assume that everyone else is focused on your mistake and can see exactly how guilty you feel. This often leads to over-apologizing or avoiding the group altogether. However, most people likely viewed the incident as a minor slip-up and moved on long before you did. To navigate these group situations more effectively, it is helpful to adopt a policy of radical clarity. Since you know that your thoughts and feelings are not actually transparent, you can make a conscious effort to over-communicate your intentions and your needs. Instead of assuming the team knows you are overwhelmed, state it clearly. Instead of assuming your partner knows you are happy with them, tell them directly. By closing the gap between your internal world and your external actions, you reduce the chance of misunderstandings and build stronger, more honest connections with the people around you. In close friendships, the illusion of transparency can create a false sense of being understood without words. Because you have shared so much history with a best friend, you might feel that your moods, preferences, and reactions are completely transparent to them. When you're having a bad day, you might expect them to automatically know exactly how to comfort you. If they fail to do so, you might feel hurt or neglected, not realizing that even your closest friends cannot see the specific nuances of your internal state unless you share them. This bias also affects how we experience empathy. When a friend tells you about a problem, you might feel a strong wave of sympathy and assume that your support is obvious to them. However, because your friend is experiencing the illusion of transparency from their own perspective, they're deeply focused on their own pain and might not perceive your quiet support as clearly as you feel it. This is why active listening and verbalizing your care are so important. You have to make your internal empathy external so that it can actually be felt by the other person. The illusion of transparency also influences our experience of being watched in public places, like a gym or a library. If you're doing something new and feel a bit clumsy, you might feel like every person in the room is tracking your every move. This internal feeling of being exposed creates the sensation that you are in a fishbowl. In reality, just like the spotlight effect, most people are focused on their own tasks and are not nearly as aware of your presence or your actions as you believe they are. to strengthen your friendships and reduce public anxiety. It helps to remember that the bridge between two minds is built through active communication, not through silent assumptions. By realizing that your internal world is your own private space, you can feel more relaxed in public and more responsible for your own needs in private. Taking the initiative to explain your feelings or ask for what you need removes the guesswork and allows for much deeper and more accurate connections with others.